Ever hear of an eye for an eye? Check this out. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Although the idea of an eye for an eye exists in other Near East cultures, like the Code of Hammurabi, where it's a bone for a bone, the eye for an eye accusation is also often leveled at Christianity as being brutal. After all, if someone kills your family, then they say the Bible allows you to kill that person's family. How horrific! Copan, however, asserts that the Old Testament is not this at all. Firstly, an eye for an eye in the Bible was not to be taken literally, with the exception of murder. The Old Testament instead calls for monetary compensation, not bodily mutilation. For example, just after this Exodus 21 verse comes the rest of 21. It says, a man or manservant or maidservant hits in the eye and destroys it, he must let the servant go to compensate for the eye. Copan goes on to say that the intent here is to have the punishment fit the crime. There are to be maximum penalties, but they must be proportionable. And what about the Code of Hammurabi I mentioned earlier? And for that matter, other similar legal dictates around the time of Deuteronomy. Copan quotes the noted historian Paul Johnson concerning the contemporary ancient Near Eastern codes to the Bible. Dreadful laws are notable for the ferocity of physical punishments, in contrast to the restraint of the Mosaic Code and enactments of Deuteronomy and Leviticus. If we take all these things into consideration, we can see how this Old Testament eye for an eye actually comes out less strict than contemporary ancient Near Eastern codes, especially where there was an option that steered away from the death penalty. Why didn't God just say that instead of this brandyish exaggeration? Remember how we said in the earlier videos that God was working within the confines of the ancient Near East and its influence upon Israel? There's a good case for interpreting the expressions of that time in light of how people talked back then. Do you really think that God would expect someone to wipe out someone else's entire family as an act of vengeance? For more questions in this series, like concerning sorcerers, spiritualists, and false prophets, look up the next video in the end note to follow. Thanks for watching.